He lavished her with diamonds, whispered promises of forever. And then Julian Thorne did the unthinkable. While his heavily pregnant wife Elara prepared their nursery, Julian was signing the deed to a sprawling Bel Air mansion, not for his growing family, but for his stunning, ambitious mistress, Serafina. But Julian underestimated Elara. He thought she'd crumble. He never imagined she'd uncover his dirtiest secret, the one hidden in the fine print of that property deed, and arrive on Serafina's doorstep, not just with her bags, but with the law, her unborn triplets, and a moving truck. Get ready for a story of betrayal, revenge, and a wife who reclaims everything. Elara Thorne traced the delicate curve of her swollen belly, a soft smile playing on her lips. 36 weeks. 36 weeks, carrying not one but 3 tiny heartbeats, a secret she and Julian had decided to keep from the wider world until the right moment. Their sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, a testament to Julian's meteoric rise in the tech world, felt like a gilded cage these days. Julian, her husband of 5 years, the man whose charm had once been as intoxicating as the vintage champagne he favored, had become distant. His excuses were always plausible: late-night meetings, international calls, urgent business trips. He was Julian Thorne, CEO of Innovatech Global, a name synonymous with cutting-edge software and ruthless ambition. Elara had always understood the demands of his world, had been his anchor, his confidant. But lately, the excuses felt thinner, his touch less frequent, his eyes holding a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. The scent of his custom-blend cologne, usually a comfort, now clung to his suits with an alien quality when he returned in the small hours. Today, however, he was home early, surprisingly so. He breezed in all apologies and a dazzling smile pecking her cheek. "Sorry I missed the obstetrician appointment, darling," he said, loosening his brioni tie. "Big meeting with the Tokyo investors. You know how it is. Everything all right with our little champion?" He always referred to the baby in the singular, a detail Elara had initially found endearing, but now felt like a tiny, persistent splinter. "Everything's perfect, Julian," Elara replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Dr. Ramirez says I'm doing wonderfully. All 3 of them are." She watched for his reaction. Julian, busy pouring himself a scotch, paused the decanter halfway to his glass. 3. He turned, his usually composed features etched with a momentary, unreadable expression, before it smoothed into practiced delight. "My God, Elara Triplets. That's incredible. We'll need a bigger nursery, a bigger everything." He laughed, a booming sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. He embraced her a little too tightly, a little too performatively. Elara knew, with a chilling certainty, that settled deep in her bones, that he was lying. Not about the surprise of triplets, perhaps, but about his enthusiasm. The distance she'd felt wasn't just business. It was a chasm, and she was standing on one side, her world about to shatter. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and hollow reassurances from Julian. He threw himself into preparations, discussing nanny agencies and Huagjang Wing for the penthouse. But Elara saw the way his phone was always angled away from her, the furtive texts he'd send, the way his eyes would dart to the door whenever an unexpected notification chimed. The truth, when it came, wasn't delivered with a dramatic confession or a tearful plea for forgiveness. It arrived silently, insidiously, through the one thing Julian valued almost as much as his reputation, his meticulously organized digital life. He'd been careless leaving his personal iPad, the one he thought she never touched on his bedside table while he showered. Elara hadn't meant to pry. A wave of nausea had her reaching for his water glass, and her hand brushed the cool metal of the device. It was unlocked. An email notification glowed on the screen, the subject line innocuous, Bel Air property finalization. Curiosity, a cold, sharp serpent uncoiled within her. Bel Air. Julian had never mentioned property in Los Angeles. With trembling fingers, she opened the email. It was from a high-end realtor, Sotheby's International Realty, confirming the successful closing on a magnificent estate in the hills of Bel Air. Attached was a congratulatory note and a link to the property listing. Her breath hitched. The mansion was breathtaking, a sprawling Mediterranean-style villa with panoramic city views, an infinity pool that seemed to spill into the horizon, and opulent interiors that screamed new money. The price tag casually mentioned in the email chain was eye-watering even for Julian. But it wasn't the extravagance that made her blood run cold. It was the recipient of the congratulatory note CC'd on the email, Serafina. Dubois at Glamour Events. Commas Serafina Dubois. The name hit Elara with the force of a physical blow. Serafina was a name whispered in the society pages, a fixture at every exclusive event, a woman whose beauty was as renowned as her ambition. Elara had met her a few times at charity galas Julian had dragged her to. Serafina with her cascade of raven hair, her knowing emerald eyes, and a smile that could charm angels or devils with equal ease. She'd always been a little too friendly with Julian, her hand lingering a fraction too long on his arm, her laughter a little too musical when he spoke. Elara had dismissed it. Julian was attractive, powerful. Women flirted. It meant nothing. Now the pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The late nights, the secretive calls, the sudden trips to San Francisco, which was conveniently close to Los Angeles. The expensive gifts he'd claimed were for important clients. Her hand flew to her mouth, a strangled sob escaping. The iPad slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the plush carpet. Julian was buying a mansion, not for their expanding family, but for his mistress. She scrolled further, a desperate, masochistic urge compelling her. There were emails discussing furniture choices, security system installations, even arrangements for a housewarming party Serafina was planning. And then the attachment that sealed her fate, the one that made her vision swim, a scanned copy of the grant deed. Julian Thorne, grantor. Serafina Dubois, grantee. No. Wait. Elara blinked, wiping tears from her eyes, forcing herself to focus on the dense legal jargon. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The deed was more complex than a simple transfer. Julian hadn't just bought it for Serafina. He'd structured it through a series of trusts' complex financial maneuvers designed to obscure ownership, to protect assets. It was typical Julian, always layers within layers. But then she saw it. A clause. A tiny, almost insignificant-looking addendum scribbled in what looked like Julian's impatient handwriting and initialed by him, barely legible beneath a notary stamp. It was a contingency, something about community property laws, a hasty inclusion perhaps insisted upon by a cautious lawyer, or perhaps a loophole Julian himself had embedded a safety net for a future he couldn't predict. Or, more likely, an oversight in his haste to impress his new conquest. It stated in convoluted legalese that took her several minutes to decipher, with the help of a quick online search for legal terms that any property acquired during their marriage, if not explicitly designated as separate property, with a spousal waiver, could be subject to community property claims. Julian, in his arrogance and desire to expedite the purchase for Serafina, had used funds from a joint investment account, an account Elara herself had contributed significantly to from her inheritance before they were married, an account whose primary designation had never been formally changed to separate property after marriage due to an oversight on both their parts. An oversight Julian was now banking on her not noticing. The deed, while listing Serafina as the primary resident and intended beneficiary in a complex trust, still had Julian Thorne as the principal trustee, and crucially the title was still technically held by the Thorne family trust, which Elara was a named, albeit passive, beneficiary of. He hadn't outright gifted it to Serafina in a way that severed all his ties, or more importantly, Elara's potential claims. He had intended to transfer it fully, but the process was clearly incomplete, likely to avoid immediate tax implications or to maintain a degree of control. A new kind of coldness seeped into Elara, displacing the raw agony. It was the ice of resolve. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had underestimated her. He had used their shared resources, her money, to build a love nest for another woman. The bathroom door opened. Julian emerged, steam billowing around him, a towel slung low on his hips. He was humming, seemingly carefree. "Everything all right, love?" he asked, noticing her pallor, her wide, haunted eyes fixed on the iPad on the floor. He followed her gaze, and the color drained from his face. The humming stopped. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, with the deafening roar of betrayal. "Bel Air looks lovely this time of year, Julian," Elara said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "Especially for a housewarming party." Julian's face, a mask of charming affability, moments before contorted. For a fleeting second she saw not her sophisticated husband, but a cornered animal. "Elara," he began, his voice hoarse, "it's not what you think, isn't it?" Elara's laugh was brittle, devoid of humor. "It's exactly what I think. You're buying a mansion for your whore with our money." The word ugly and raw hung in the air between them. The illusion of their perfect life already cracked, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The ensuing confrontation was not the explosive screaming match Elara might have once imagined. Instead, a chilling calm descended upon her. Julian, stripped of his suave veneer, cycled through a predictable repertoire: denial, minimization, blame. "It was a mistake, Elara, a moment of madness. She means nothing to me. It's just a distraction. The pressure of work, the upcoming triplets. I just needed an escape. You've been so distant yourself lately." Each excuse was a fresh insult, each lie a deeper twist of the knife. Elara listened, her silence more damning than any accusation. The pain was a living entity within her, coiling around her heart, but beneath it, the seed of an idea sparked by that hastily scribbled addendum on the deed began to take root. When he finally ran out of steam, his pleas for forgiveness sounding hollow, even to his own ears, Elara spoke, her voice devoid of inflection. "Get out, Julian. Elara, please. Get out." She pointed towards the door, her hand steady, despite the tremors that racked her body. "Take what you need for tonight. We'll discuss the rest later." Defeated Julian dressed in silence, his arrogance replaced by a sullen resentment. He grabbed a pre-packed overnight bag from his closet, a bag whose existence was another small, sharp betrayal, and left without another word. The click of the door latch echoed in the sudden vast emptiness of the penthouse. Alone, Elara finally allowed the sobs to come gut-wrenching waves of grief that left her gasping. For her marriage, for the family, She thought they were building for the man she thought Julian was. But as the tears subsided, a steely determination solidified within her. He wouldn't just walk away from this unscathed. He wouldn't humiliate her, endanger their children's financial future, and build a new life with her money, leaving her to pick up the pieces. The first call she made was to her younger brother, Marcus Vance. Marcus wasn't just family. He was one of the sharpest corporate lawyers in New York, a partner at a prestigious firm known for his meticulous attention to detail and his unwavering loyalty to those he cared about. He had always been wary of Julian's slick charm. "Elara, what's wrong? You sound terrible." Marcus's concerned voice came through the line. Through choked sobs, she recounted everything. The distance, the lies, the iPad Serafina Dubois, the Bel Air mansion, and crucially the details of the deed. Marcus listened patiently, interjecting only to ask clarifying questions. When she finished, there was a long pause. "That utter bastard," he finally said, his voice laced with cold fury. "All right, Ellie. Don't you worry. He's played this very, very stupidly. That addendum, the use of joint funds for what he clearly intended as a gift to his mistress without your consent. That's not just an oversight, that's a legal grenade he's handed you." "What can I do, Marcus?" Elara whispered, clutching the phone. "I don't want his money out of spite, but this is too much. He's trying to make a fool of me." "Spite is a perfectly acceptable motivator in situations like these, Ellie," Marcus said grimly. "But this is about more than that. It's about securing your future and the future of your children. Send me a copy of that deed and any other documentation you found. We need to act fast before he tries to further complicate the ownership structure or move more assets." He continued. "Legally, depending on how that Thorne family trust is structured and the specifics of New York and California community property laws, you have significant leverage. If those funds were indeed commingled and not properly segregated as his sole and separate property, you have a claim. A very strong one. The fact that you are a named beneficiary in the family trust, even passively, also gives us an angle. He bought that mansion with marital assets, Elara. That makes it marital property, or at least significantly encumbered by your interest regardless of who he intended it for." A flicker of hope ignited within Elara. "So the mansion," Marcus affirmed, "could very well be half yours, or depending on how we play this entirely within your control, at least for now. He clearly intended to defraud you of your community property rights. We can file an emergency petition, a lis pendants, on the property, effectively freezing any attempts by him or Ms. Dubois to sell it, refinance it, or transfer the title cleanly." The next few days were a whirlwind. Elara, under Marcus's guidance, gathered financial records, emails, anything that could substantiate her claims. The depth of Julian's financial entanglement with Serafina was sickening. Lavish gifts, 5-star travel, a generous allowance. He had been funding her luxurious lifestyle for months, possibly years. Dr. Ramirez, during a checkup, noticed Elara's distress and listened with quiet sympathy as Elara, needing an outlet, confessed the bare bones of her situation. The doctor, a woman of immense calm and practicality, simply squeezed her hand. "You are strong, Elara. Stronger than you think. Focus on yourself and those babies. Stress is not good for them or for you." Her words, though gentle, were a call to action. Elara began to eat properly again, forced herself to take short walks, and practiced the breathing exercises from her prenatal yoga class. She was fighting for 4 lives now. Marcus, true to his word, moved with lightning speed. He assembled a formidable legal team, including a sharp-tongued California litigator, an expert in high-net-worth divorces and property disputes. The strategy they devised was bold, audacious, and entirely unexpected. He thinks you'll file for divorce, demand a settlement, and quietly retreat to lick your wounds, Marcus explained during a late-night video call, his face grim but resolute. He expects you to fight for the penthouse, for alimony, for child support. He doesn't expect you to go after the Bel Air property with such directness. What directness? Elara asked, her voice hoarse with fatigue, but thrumming with a nascent sense of power. We're not just going to file a claim, Ellie. Marcus said, a predatory glint in his eyes that Elara had only ever seen him use in a courtroom. We're going to assert your rights as a beneficiary of the Thorne Family Trust and as a spouse whose community property was improperly used. We're going to argue that Julian, in his attempt to defraud you and provide for his mistress, has breached his fiduciary duty to the trust and to you. We're going to petition the court, not just for your share, but for injunctive relief that prevents him from dissipating this asset. And given the circumstances, his flagrant affair, the use of marital funds for a secret purchase for his paramour, the fact you're carrying his triplets, we believe we can get an interim order. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. An order that could potentially grant you temporary exclusive use and possession of the Bel Air property. Elara stared at him, speechless. You mean I could live there? Precisely, Marcus confirmed. It's legally complex, but not impossible. It's a marital asset, or at least an asset significantly entangled with marital funds. He bought it. You have a right to it, arguably, a stronger immediate right, given his actions and your vulnerable state. And what better way to protect your interest in the property than by physically occupying it? It sends a very clear message. And, practically speaking, a heavily pregnant woman with triplets showing up on the doorstep with a court order is a PR nightmare Julian won't want. A wild, almost hysterical laugh bubbled up from Elara. The sheer audacity of it was terrifying, yet exhilarating. Moving into the mansion Julian had bought for Serafina. It was the ultimate poetic justice. Serafina is planning a housewarming party next Saturday, Elara said, remembering the emails. It's supposed to be her grand debut into LA society, with that house as her backdrop. Marcus grinned a wolfish expression. Even better, an audience. The plan was set, while Julian was busy strategizing with his own lawyers, whom Marcus anticipated would advise him to offer a quick, quiet settlement. Elara and Marcus were preparing for war. Marcus filed the necessary motions in a California court, citing urgency due to Elara's advanced pregnancy and the risk of Julian attempting to hide or transfer assets. He highlighted Julian's deception and the blatant misuse of community funds. A few days later, Marcus called Elara, his voice triumphant. We got it, Ellie. An ex parte emergency order. Temporary, but it gives you possession. The judge was not amused by Mr. Thorne's antics, especially considering your condition and the origin of the funds. He called it brazen. You, Elara Thorne, have the legal right to reside at 10 Bel Air Vista Road until further notice from the court, and Julian is restrained from interfering with your occupancy. Elara sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. It was happening. She booked a flight to Los Angeles, not first class as Julian would have, but a modest seat in business. Her sister, Chloe Vance, a fiercely protective graphic designer with a no-nonsense attitude and a recently acquired kickboxing hobby, insisted on accompanying her. No way are you doing this alone, Ellie, Chloe had declared, her eyes flashing. That snake and his Barbie doll need to see a united front. Besides, she added with a grin, I wouldn't miss this for the world. This is going to be better than reality TV. The Californian sun beat down on the meticulously manicured lawns of Bel Air as the black SUV carrying Elara and Chloe turned onto Bel Air Vista Road. Palatial mansions hidden behind towering gates and lush foliage lined the winding street. Each one was a monument to wealth and exclusivity. Number 10 was no different, a sprawling Mediterranean villa painted a pristine white, its terracotta roof gleaming under the afternoon sky. Music, a vibrant Latin beat, drifted from beyond the ornate wrought-iron gates. Brightly colored valets in crisp uniforms were already busy parking a steady stream of luxury cars, Bentleys, Ferraris, Rolls-Royces, along the curb. Serafina Dubois's housewarming party was clearly in full swing. Showtime, Chloe murmured, adjusting the strap of her oversized handbag, which Elara suspected contained more than just a wallet and lipstick, perhaps a can of pepper spray, or at least a very sternly worded letter. Elara took a deep breath, her hand resting protectively on her considerable baby bump. The triplets were active today, their movements a constant reminder of what she was fighting for. She clutched the crisp, notarized court order in her other hand. Marcus had arranged for a local process server and a uniformed off-duty police officer to meet them just to ensure everything remained civil and legal. They were waiting discreetly in a car just down the road. Ready? Chloe asked, her gaze surprisingly gentle. Elara nodded a grim determination, settling on her features. As I'll ever be. The SUV pulled up to the gates. A burly security guard in a sharp suit approached his expression impassive. Name, please. Elara Thorne, she said, her voice clear and steady. I believe I'm expected. In fact, I own the place. Or at least I have a court order granting me possession. The guard's eyebrow twitched. He spoke into his mouthpiece, his eyes never leaving Elara. After a moment, he frowned. There must be some mistake, ma'am. Ms. Dubois is the resident here. There's no mistake, Elara replied, holding up the court order. Perhaps you should inform Ms. Dubois and Mr. Julian Thorne, if he's present, that I'm here, and I have the legal right to enter. The guard, clearly flustered, made another call. This time his voice was more urgent. The music from within seemed to falter for a moment, then resumed a little less enthusiastically. After what felt like an eternity, the gates slowly swung inwards. The process server and the officer on cue from Chloe's subtle hand signal pulled up behind them. Let the games begin, Chloe said under her breath, a spark of anticipation in her eyes. Elara didn't share her sister's glee, but she felt a surge of adrenaline. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times. Stay calm, stay firm, stick to the legal facts. They drove up the sweeping driveway, past a tiered fountain and beds of vibrant bougainvillea, stopping before the imposing front entrance. Massive double doors of dark carved wood. As Elara, with Chloe by her side, carefully maneuvered herself out of the SUV, the front doors burst open. Serafina Dubois stood framed in the doorway, a vision in a clinging emerald green dress that showcased her flawless figure. Her raven hair was styled in glamorous waves, and diamonds dripped from her ears and throat. Her smile, initially radiant for her arriving guests, froze when she saw Elara. Her emerald eyes, usually sparkling with amusement, narrowed into slits of disbelief, then fury. Behind her, several lavishly dressed guests, champagne flutes in hand, peered out curiously. Their chatter dying down as they sensed the unfolding drama. Elara, Serafina's voice was a shocked whisper, quickly morphing into a venomous hiss. "What in God's name do you think you're doing here? This is a private party." "Hello, Serafina," Elara said, her voice surprisingly calm, despite the frantic thumping of her heart. She advanced slowly, Chloe a protective shadow beside her. "Actually, this is my house. Or to be more precise, a marital asset. I have a court order granting me temporary exclusive possession of." She held up the document. "I believe you've been served, or you're about to be." The process server chose that moment to step forward, handing a copy of the order to a stunned Serafina. "Serafina Dubois, you are hereby notified." His formal voice cut through the sudden silence. Serafina stared at the papers as if they were venomous snakes. Then at Elara, her face a mask of outrage. "This is ridiculous. Julian bought this house for me." "Julian?" Elara said, her gaze sweeping past Serafina to the stunned faces in the hallway. "Made a very grave error, using marital funds without my consent. Funds that were in part mine to begin with. The court agrees, at least for now." A ripple of shocked murmurs went through the assembled guests. This was juicier than any reality show. Mrs. Peterson, a notorious society blogger known for her sharp wit and even sharper online columns, was already surreptitiously filming on her phone from behind a large floral arrangement. "Where is Julian?" Elara asked, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. As if on cue, Julian Thorne appeared pushing his way through the throng of onlookers. He had a champagne flute in one hand, his face flushed, a jovial party host expression plastered on. It faltered and then crumbled entirely when he saw Elara. His skin went ashen. "Elara, what is the meaning of this?" He stammered, his eyes darting from Elara's determined face to the court order in Serafina's trembling hand, then to the stoic police officer standing near the entrance. "The meaning, Julian," Elara said, taking a step closer, "is that I'm moving in with my triplets." She gestured vaguely to her prominent stomach. "There's plenty of room, wouldn't you say? You always were so generous." Serafina finally found her voice, a shrill cry of fury. "You can't do this. This is my home, Julian. Tell her. Tell this cow that she can't just waltz in here." "Ma'am," the officer interjected, his voice firm but calm. "This is a civil matter, but the court order is clear. Mrs. Thorne has the right to be here. We are here to ensure there are no breaches of the peace." Julian looked trapped, his eyes wide with panic. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, seemingly speechless. The confident CEO was gone, replaced by a man visibly crumbling under the weight of his own deceit. His guests were witnessing his public humiliation. "My bags are in the car, Julian." Elara continued, her voice relentless. "Perhaps you could have someone bring them in. Or are you too busy entertaining your guest?" She looked directly at Serafina, whose face was now a dangerous shade of crimson. "You conniving bitch!" Serafina shrieked, lunging forward, her perfectly manicured nails aimed at Elara's face. Chloe moved instantly, stepping between them, catching Serafina's wrists in a surprisingly strong grip. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Chloe said, her voice dangerously low. "Assaulting a pregnant woman, especially one with a court order, bad for the image, darling. And I hear prison jumpsuits really don't suit your complexion." The officer took a step forward. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down." Serafina, panting with rage, struggled for a moment before Chloe released her with a disdainful shove. She stumbled back, her eyes blazing. The party was well and truly over. Guests were already backing away, whispering furiously into their phones, eager to spread the news of the most scandalous Bel Air drama in years. Elara looked at Julian, her expression unreadable. "Well, Julian, I'm waiting. Which room has the best morning light?" "The babies will need a sunny nursery." Julian just stared, his champagne flute slipping from his nerveless fingers and shattering on the marble floor, the sound echoing the utter destruction of his carefully constructed world. "Oh, and Serafina," Elara added, turning to the fuming Mistress, a small, almost pitying smile on her lips. "About that housewarming party. I'm afraid it's cancelled, or rather postponed, under new management." She then addressed the remaining gawking guests. "Thank you all for coming. Please help yourselves to some champagne on your way out. Don't let it go to waste." The days that followed Elara's dramatic arrival were a masterclass in psychological warfare played out against the opulent backdrop of the Bel Air mansion. Julian, humiliated and furious, quickly decamped to a suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel, leaving Serafina to deal with the immediate fallout. He was, however, forced to leave most of his clothes and personal effects, as Elara, with chilling politeness, pointed out that the court order granted her possession of the house and its contents that were part of the marital estate pending further rulings. Serafina, after her initial explosive rage, adopted a tactic of icy hostility and petty sabotage. She remained in the mansion confinement rather than choice, as Marcus had astutely predicted. Leaving would mean forfeiting any perceived claim or control, and Serafina was not one to surrender easily. She was also, Elara suspected, hoping Julian would swiftly fix the situation. The mansion, designed for luxurious comfort, became a gilded battlefield. Elara, with Chloe as her ever-vigilant lieutenant, took the master suite, its vast windows overlooking the city, its bathroom the size of Elara's old New York kitchen. It had clearly been intended for Serafina, judging by the lingering scent of her expensive French perfume and the array of designer shopping bags spilling from a walk-in closet. Elara had them all packed into boxes and moved to the garage. "Consider it storage, darling," Elara had said sweetly when Serafina had confronted her, her voice tight with fury. "Or perhaps you can list them on the real. You might need the cash." Serafina, relegated to one of the guest suites, albeit a lavish one, made her displeasure known. The stereo would blast at odd hours, usually when Elara was trying to rest. Delicious-smelling food would be cooked with none offered to Elara or Chloe. Serafina would parade around in barely their outfits, often when Julian made his tense obligatory visits to discuss legal strategy with his own increasingly stressed lawyers via Zoom calls from the mansion's home office, which Elara had also claimed. Elara, however, refused to be baited. She focused on her well-being and the impending arrival of her triplets. She arranged for prenatal massages, had healthy food delivered, and took slow walks in the expansive gardens, always with Chloe nearby. She exuded an aura of serene, implacable calm that seemed to infuriate Serafina more than any outburst would have. The staff, caught in the crossfire, were a mix of bewildered, intimidated, and secretly amused. The head housekeeper, a stern, middle-aged woman named Maria, had seen her share of wealthy employers' eccentricities, but this was a new level of drama. Elara, however, made a point of treating all staff with respect and courtesy, a stark contrast to Serafina's often demanding and dismissive attitude. Slowly, subtly, allegiances began to shift. One afternoon, as Elara was resting by the pool, Maria approached her ostensibly to offer her a fresh towel and a glass of iced tea. Mrs. Thorne, Maria began hesitantly, her dark eyes watchful. I hope you don't mind me saying, but be careful. Ms. Dubois, she is not happy. She makes many calls. Angry calls. Thank you, Maria, Elara said, offering a small smile. I appreciate the concern. I am being careful. She had a visitor yesterday evening. Maria continued, lowering her voice. When you and your sister were out for your walk. A man, not Mr. Thorne. He looked like trouble. They were in the study whispering. Elara sat up straighter. Do you remember anything about him? What he looked like? Maria frowned in concentration. Tall, thin, with a scar on his left cheek. He wore a dark suit, even though it was warm. He didn't look like one of Mr. Thorne's usual business associates. More like someone from a bad movie. A chill ran down Elara's spine. Was Serafina getting desperate? Julian, for all his faults, was unlikely to resort to outright physical intimidation, fearing the legal and PR repercussions. Serafina, however, seemed more volatile, less predictable. Elara thanked Maria again, making a mental note of the description. She immediately called Marcus. A man with a scar on his cheek, Marcus mused after Elara relayed Maria's account. That's a bit cliché, but noted. It sounds like Serafina might be exploring unorthodox avenues. I'll have a private investigator look into her known associates. In the meantime, beef up your security there if you can. The court order allows for reasonable measures to ensure your safety and the security of the property. Chloe, when informed, was grim. I knew that Viper was going to play dirty. Right new house rule. Neither of us is alone in this mausoleum ever. And I'm upgrading my handbag essentials from pepper spray to a taser. Innovatech Global's stock price was taking a hit. The board of directors, initially supportive of their star CEO, were now making nervous noises about reputational damage. Julian's carefully curated image of a brilliant, untouchable business tycoon was shattering. He started visiting the mansion more often, ostensibly to see Elara and discuss a reasonable settlement. These discussions usually devolved into him, pleading, then blaming, then threatening before retreating in defeat. You're destroying me, Elara. He'd raged during one such visit, his face pale and drawn. My career, my reputation. For what revenge? For my children's security, Julian. Elara had replied calmly, her hand on her belly. And for the rather large sum of my inheritance you decided to spend on your hobby. She gestured vaguely towards Serafina, who was pointedly sunbathing in a microscopic bikini nearby, pretending not to listen but soaking in every word. You made this bed, Julian. Now you get to lie in it. Or rather, I do. Serafina, far from being a comfort to Julian, was becoming another source of pressure. Her dream of becoming the undisputed queen of Bel Air society, with Julian as her besotted benefactor, was evaporating. Her calls to him were increasingly shrill, demanding he get rid of Elara. One evening, Elara was reviewing some financial documents Marcus had sent over, detailed tracings of Julian's spending that painted an even more damning picture of his affair, when Chloe burst into her room, her face pale. Ellie, you need to see this. She was holding Serafina's sleek, expensive smartphone. Where did you get that? Elara asked, alarmed. She left it on the patio table when she flounced off to yell at Julian on her other phone about him not yelling at you enough. Chloe explained breathlessly. It wasn't locked. Don't judge me, I was curious, and look what I found in her deleted texts. Chloe showed Elara the screen. It was a series of recently deleted messages recovered using a simple trick Chloe knew. The messages were to an unsaved number, the sender ID simply Fixer. Fixer. The package is ready. Contains items she shouldn't have near her delicate condition. Plant it in her rooms. Make it look like she's unstable, a danger to herself and the babies. Cops will have to remove her then. Doctor's report can be arranged. Serafina. Is it risky? I don't want this traced back to me. Fixer. Minimal risk. My guy is a professional. She'll be out by the weekend. Just make sure he has access. Serafina. He will. The back terrace door is always accidentally left unlocked by one of the maids I still have influence over. Elara felt the blood drain from her face. Serafina wasn't just trying to annoy her. She was actively plotting to have her framed, possibly drugged, and removed from the house, potentially even to lose her babies or be declared an unfit mother. The man with the scar on his cheek, Maria's visitor, was likely this Fixer or his operative. She's trying to set me up, Elara whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and cold rage. She's actually trying to harm me, to harm the babies. Chloe's eyes were like chips of ice. Not on my watch. She looked at the phone. She's an idiot. Deleted doesn't mean gone. We have her, Ellie. We have her cold. Before Elara could even process the full extent of Serafina's venomous plan, a new message pinged on Serafina's phone, still in Chloe's hand. It was from Fixer. Fixer operative en route. ETA 30 minutes. Get ready for the show. 30 minutes. They had 30 minutes before someone arrived to plant evidence to potentially harm Elara. The cohabitation from hell was about to escalate into something far more dangerous. Panic clawed at Elara's throat, but Chloe's steely composure was infectious. Okay, no time to waste, Chloe said, her mind already racing. First, we document these texts thoroughly. Screenshots, photos, video of the screen. Then we call Marcus. And then we set a little trap of our own. While Elara, her hands shaking, took multiple pictures of Serafina's phone screen with her own, Chloe was already dialing their lawyer. Marcus code red. Serafina is sending someone to plant something in Elara's room. Right now. ETA less than 30. She's been texting a Fixer. We have proof. What do we do? Marcus, even over the phone, sounded instantly alert. Okay, stay calm. Don't confront Serafina yet. We need to catch this operative in the act. Do you still have that off-duty officer's contact? The one from the arrival? Yes, Chloe confirmed. Call him, explain the situation. Tell him you have credible evidence of a conspiracy to commit a crime, specifically to fabricate evidence and potentially endanger Elara and her unborn children. Request immediate, discreet police presence. Emphasize the urgency and Elara's vulnerable state. I'll start making calls on my end, get some official pressure moving. Marcus paused. And Chloe, Elara, lock yourselves in a secure room. Do not engage with anyone who tries to enter until uniformed police arrive. There's no time for that if they're coming to plant something in her room, Chloe argued. We need to let them think they can get in, then catch them. It was risky, but Chloe's protective instincts were overriding caution. Elara surprisingly found her own fear solidifying into a cold, hard anger. Chloe's right. If we hide, they'll just try again. Let them walk into it. Maria mentioned the back terrace door. That leads almost directly to the wing, with the master suite. Marcus was hesitant. It's dangerous. If this Fixer is who I think he might be, there are whispers of a discreet but ruthless operative who handles delicate situations for some of LA's less savory elite. His people are not to be trifled with. We won't be alone, Chloe said firmly. We'll call Officer Miller right now, and we'll be ready." After a tense call, Officer Miller, the same officer who had ensured their peaceful entry, promised to dispatch a patrol car discreetly to the vicinity and to arrive himself as quickly as possible, lights and sirens off, until the last moment. 20 minutes later, Elara and Chloe were positioned in the grand, dimly lit hallway leading to the master suite. Elara, despite her advanced pregnancy making stealth difficult, was surprisingly agile, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Chloe clutched a heavy marble statue from a nearby console table, her knuckles white. They had left the door to Elara's suite slightly ajar, as if carelessly unsecured. The house was eerily quiet. Serafina was in her own suite at the opposite end of the mansion, likely listening for the sounds of her plan succeeding. Then a faint noise, the scrape of a lock being jiggled at the far end of the west wing terrace, the one Maria had mentioned. A shadow moved past the sheer curtains of a side window. Elara's heart hammered. Chloe gave her a reassuring nod. A tall, lean figure, dressed in dark clothing, slipped through the terrace door. He moved with practiced silence, a small duffel bag in his hand. It was the man Maria had described. The scar on his cheek was visible even in the low light. He made a beeline for Elara's suite, clearly knowing his target. Just as he reached the partially open door and pushed it inward, Chloe let out a blood-curdling scream. Not of fear, but of outrage. "Police, he's in here! He's trying to hurt my sister!" Simultaneously, the distinct sound of approaching sirens, suddenly switched on, pierced the night. The intruder froze, startled by the scream and the unexpected sound of sirens. He looked wildly around, realizing he'd walked into a trap. He turned to flee, but Chloe, surprisingly fast, swung the marble statue, not aiming to hit him, but to block his path, forcing him to stumble. At that exact moment, 2 uniformed officers' guns drawn, burst through the main entrance of the mansion, with Officer Miller close behind. "LAPD, don't move." The intruder caught between the officers, and the now furious sisters wisely raised his hands. His duffel bag dropped to the floor with a soft thud. Serafina, drawn by the commotion, appeared at the end of the hallway. Her face a mask of shock and dawning horror as she saw the police, the intruder cornered, and the triumphant, accusing glares of Elara and Chloe. "What is going on?" Serafina feigned innocence, but her voice trembled. "That's what we'd like to know, Miss Dubois," Officer Miller said, his eyes hard. He nodded to one of the officers, who carefully picked up the duffel bag. Inside, they found a disturbing assortment, several vials of an unknown liquid syringes, and a small, clear plastic bag containing white powder. There were also several items of Elara's lingerie, presumably stolen from her drawers earlier, by a complicit staff member, ready to be contaminated. "This man," Elara said, her voice shaking, but clear, pointing at the intruder, "broke into my room. He was sent here to plant those things by her." She pointed directly at Serafina. "That's a lie," Serafina shrieked, but her eyes darted nervously towards the intruder, who remained stoically silent. "We have evidence, officer," Chloe stated, holding up Serafina's phone, still displaying the incriminating texts. "Texts between Ms. Dubois and someone called Fixer, arranging this whole thing." Officer Miller took the phone, his expression grim, as he scrolled through the messages. "Ms. Dubois," he said, his voice cold, "I think you need to come with us. You have the right to remain silent." Serafina's carefully constructed world imploded. As the officer read her Miranda rights, her bravado crumbled, replaced by a desperate, panicked denial. She was escorted out of her Bel Air dream house in handcuffs. The flash of paparazzi cameras, alerted by an anonymous tip likely from Mrs. Peterson, who seemed to have a sixth sense for scandal, illuminating her tear-streaked, stunned face. The man with the scar followed his silence absolute. Julian arrived shortly after, summoned by a frantic call from one of Serafina's few remaining loyal staff members. He walked into a scene of controlled chaos, police officers collecting evidence, Elara giving a statement, Chloe looking like a conquering hero. When he was informed of what Serafina had attempted, even he looked aghast. The foolishness was one thing. The criminality and the sheer malice of it was another. The arrest of Serafina Dubois for conspiracy breaking and entering and attempted fabrication of evidence, among other potential charges, was explosive news. The Mistress mansion meltdown escalated into a full-blown Hollywood crime saga. For Julian Thorne, it was the final nail in the coffin of his public image. The board of Innovatech Global, already teetering, acted swiftly. An emergency meeting was called. Julian was asked to resign as CEO, effective immediately, to protect the interests of the company and its shareholders from further reputational damage. His multi-million-dollar severance package was put under review due to clauses about gross misconduct. His empire, built on brilliance and ruthlessness, was crumbling because of a tawdry affair and an astonishing underestimation of the woman he had wronged. In the days that followed, Julian became a shadow of his former self. He made one last desperate attempt to reason with Elara, finding her in the mansion's sun-drenched conservatory, calmly sipping tea. "Elara," he began, his voice hoarse, his expensive suit rumpled. "This has gone too far. Her career is ruined. Mine is in tatters. What more do you want?" Elara looked at him not with hatred, but with a profound, weary sadness. "What I wanted, Julian, was a husband I could trust, a father for my children. What I wanted was the life you promised me. You took all of that away. This—" She gestured around the opulent room. "This is just fallout. Consequences." "I'll give you anything," he pleaded. "A settlement, whatever you want. Just make this stop. Call off your lawyers." "It's a little late for that, Julian," Elara said softly. "The police are involved now. Serafina committed serious crimes. And as for our divorce, Marcus will be in touch with your lawyers. I suspect you'll find his terms quite comprehensive." She paused. "You should know, Julian, the funds you used to buy this house. Marcus's forensic accountants have traced a significant portion directly back to the principal of my premarital inheritance that was never formally converted to separate property. It seems my claim to this house is even stronger than we initially thought." Julian stared at her, the fight visibly draining out of him. He had lost, utterly and comprehensively lost. He had sought to have everything, and in doing so was losing it all. As Julian walked away, a broken man, Elara felt a pang, not of pity, but of closure. The storm was passing. But she knew with the impending arrival of her triplets, a different, more demanding and infinitely more rewarding chapter was about to begin. The mansion, once a symbol of betrayal, was slowly transforming. It was becoming hers. The dramatic arrest of Serafina Dubois and Julian Thorne's subsequent professional ruin sent shockwaves through their elite social circles and the business world. Serafina, after a tearful arraignment, was released on a hefty bail, her passport confiscated. Her trial was set to be a media circus. Julian, stripped of his CEO title and facing a protracted and potentially ruinous divorce, retreated from public view, his days of commanding boardrooms and dazzling investors over. A few days later, Elara brought Leomia and Noah home to Bel Air. The mansion, once echoing with the ghosts of deceit, now felt warm and alive. The nursery was ready, filled with sunlight. Maria and the staff cooed over the baby's genuine affection in their eyes. As Alara settled into the master suite, her master suite, with her 3 tiny miracles sleeping soundly in their bassinets beside her bed, she felt a profound sense of peace mixed with an ironclad resolve. The battle had been brutal. The emotional scars would take time to heal, but she had not only survived, she had triumphed. The twist wasn't just that she got the house. It was that Julian's own elaborate schemes, his arrogance in using her money and mismanaging trust assets, were the very things that handed it to her on a silver platter. He had, in his desperate attempt to secure a lavish love nest for his mistress, inadvertently secured a legacy for his children and their mother. The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place a week later when a registered letter arrived from the legal firm representing the Thorne family trust's independent directors. It confirmed Marcus's prediction. Julian Thorne had been formally removed as trustee for the Bel Air property due to gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. Alara Vance Thorne was appointed as the sole receiver and trustee, with the strong likelihood of outright ownership being transferred to her name as part of the divorce settlement, given the clear provenance of the funds used. She looked out over the glittering panorama of Los Angeles from her bedroom window, 3 tiny heartbeats echoing in the quiet room. This wasn't just a house. It was a testament to her strength, a sanctuary for her family, and a legacy reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. Julian had bought a mansion for his mistress, but in the end his pregnant wife had moved in with their triplets, and the property deed now firmly and legally in her name. The wheels of justice, though sometimes slow, ground inexorably on. Serafina Dubois' trial was short and brutal. The evidence, the damning text messages, the testimony of the apprehended fixer, who quickly turned state's evidence in exchange for a lighter sentence, and Maria's eyewitness account of his earlier visit, was overwhelming. Serafina, despite her expensive legal team's attempts to portray her as a woman scorned and manipulated by Julian, was found guilty on multiple charges, including conspiracy to fabricate evidence and solicitation of a felony. The judge, citing her callous disregard for the well-being of a pregnant woman and her unborn children, sentenced her to a significant prison term, effectively ending her socialite aspirations and her career in event planning. Her descent from Bel Air glamour to a state penitentiary was a stark warning chronicled with glee by Mrs. Peterson's blog, which saw its readership skyrocket. Julian Thorne's downfall was less dramatic, but equally complete. His divorce from Alara was finalized with surprising speed once the full extent of his financial duplicity regarding the Bel Air mansion and other marital assets came to light. Faced with irrefutable evidence and the threat of further legal action from the Thorne family trust over other financial irregularities, Marcus's team had begun to uncover. Julian agreed to a settlement heavily weighted in Alara's favor. He lost the mansion, a significant portion of his Innovatech stock, and was ordered to pay substantial child support for Leo, Mia, and Noah. And so Alara Thorne didn't just get revenge. She got everything. The mansion, her independence, and 3 beautiful reasons to build a brighter future. Julian and Serafina learned the hard way that underestimating a woman's strength and resolve is a fool's game. Alara's story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of devastating betrayal, resilience, intelligence, and a little bit of legal savvy can turn the tables in the most spectacular way. She rewrote her story, and in doing so, secured a legacy of empowerment. What did you think of Ilara's ultimate triumph? Let me know in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama twists and sweet, sweet justice, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends who love a good story of a woman reclaiming her power, and most importantly, subscribe for more gripping tales. Click that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching.